And I had a couple questions. Mary, I was going to call you, but I didn't get around to it. Can you delete the second K in Wickstrom? Okay. And I was going to ask, are all the ARPA items listed in number 3? Is that all we talked about?
Let me just pull it
I know we were talking about the whole list.
Right, because the motion is to approve the whole list, and those are the changes to the list, but you're right, the minutes probably should say the list.
Yeah.
So you want it just to be the list? The TA recommended list? Is
That's,
that-
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you could even say the TA recommended list of with these changes. This is why I read it twice, and that, it's like, oh yeah, we added that, we changed that,
Well,
we combined this together.
I read it
but,
last
like,
Friday,
the-
so maybe,
The
you know.
idea that it doesn't include the actual things that we,
Is that better? You see that one?
but with the changes that were originally listed there. Because we took the original list and we made the changes that you list. So your notes were great about the changes we made to the list, but I thought the minutes might actually say what the list is, which I don't have in front of me at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to do the wrong one.
But I mean, on
And I
some of
have
those
it.
items, we don't have real costs.
No, but we had an estimate of how much we have sort of set aside. It might go up or down.
Right, and we've got that on the agenda tonight in case there are any changes.
Yep.
Okay. So with those changes, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. General public comment. Alrighty. And the first thing on our agenda is an appointment with the Conservation Commission agent, Maddie Vandenboom. She's going to talk to us about bird banding, a bird banding project.
Hello everyone,
Aye.
how's it going? I created like a little presentation for you about the Ager Woods research that I proposed to conservation, and we just started up this weekend. I was able to get all the nets up Saturday, and we ran it for the first time on Sunday. So talk a little bit about what we're doing. So Ager Woods, so in 2011, Barry Ager sold 40 plus acres of undeveloped forest to the town of Berlin. The property is located on Burns Hill at 111 Ball Hill Road. It connects to other conservation land owned by Boylston, Northborough, Sudbury Valley trustees, and Berlin as well. It is one of the properties that makes up the Ball Hill Road conservation area. The site is pretty evenly aged upland forest. So to give you an idea, so that's acre down there, and then this is all Ball Hill conservation land as well. So last year, the Conservation Commission applied for a forestry stewardship program through DCR for the Ball Hill Road conservation area. So the grant assists municipalities in establishing a forest stewardship plan. So once a stewardship plan is established, the municipality becomes eligible for grants to get financial assistance in implementing stewardship plans so they can use forestry management practices, that sort of thing, on their lands. So the Conservation Commission is currently working to hire a forester to kind of come up with the stewardship plan for us, and our focus is on bird habitat. And since our focus is on bird habitat, I propose that we start like a MAPS station. So a MAPS station is a monitoring avian productivity and survivorship. So it focuses on breeding birds. So I want to use a MAPS station as a way to just judge the success of that stewardship plan and forestry management. So ideally we would run the map stations a year or two prior to doing any type of cutting, just to get like a baseline for the area, what's breeding there, what the diversity is like, that kind of thing. And then we would also run the map station during the forestry management, and then years after it to see what sort of changes come with that. So I have a little video on what the MAPS program actually is.
In general, birds are good indicators of environmental health. Knowing something about bird populations through banding specifically allows us to monitor status and trends of those bird populations over time. The MAPS bird banding program stands for Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship. It's coordinated by the Institute of Bird Populations and is implemented by a number of partners and volunteers, all following the same procedures of capturing birds, marking them, and hopefully recapturing them over time. These maps show generally where all of those stations are across North America, as well as in New York. The MAPS season has 7 sampling periods, typically once every 10 days from May through August. So we end up sampling about 7 times each year. We capture birds using a special type of net called a mist net. You can see how it literally disappears into the surrounding area once you open that net up. It blends right in. So birds really can't see the net as they're moving through the landscape, and they literally fly into the net and fall into the deep pockets of that very fine mesh. We carefully extract them from the net, place the bird into a bird bag, and that's a way to safely transport the bird back to our banding station. We have a bander with the bird in hand, and we also have a scribe recording the information that's specific to that bird as we walk through the banding process. The first thing that we do is identify the species. Once we know what species we have, we can identify what band size we need. You can see on these bands the unique series of numbers that each band has. We apply that band to a bird's leg using pliers. Once the bird is identified and banded, we determine how old the bird is. We determine, is it an adult or is it a juvenile? We look at the sex of the bird. Is it a male or a female? We also look at a number of different characteristics about the bird's body condition, such as do they have any stores of fat that shows how fit they are, if they have energy reserves. And we also look at flight feather molt, new feathers growing in. We also take a variety of measurements. We also weigh each bird before we release it. When it's all said and done, we've collected a variety of information about each individual bird. You can see all of the different parameters that I just talked about are recorded for every single bird that we band. If you're interested in banding birds and you're looking for how could you possibly help, one of the best things you could do is if you encounter a banded bird, please report it. If you'd like to learn more about the MAPS program in general, here's the address for the Institute of Bird Populations.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what we're looking to establish at Eagle Woods. We did our first trial was Sunday. We caught 6 birds, 4 of which were upping birds. 1 was a veery and 1 was an eastern wood pewee. So,
So you drag all that equipment with you?
pretty much. So the nets are currently set up, closed, and spun up now. Thanks to Roger, he donated a set of poles, 10 poles, to the program and saved us quite a bit of money. But yeah, so essentially all those nets are set up on electrical conduit poles, so we needed 20 of those to start up the program. But yeah, and then I drag all the banding equipment out and set it up on tables.
Is that why you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to start
Part of the
that?
reason, yeah.
So are the nets up now?
So the nets are up, but they're closed. So you
Okay.
bring all the things, all the trammels together and spin them, so nothing could get caught in them while we're not there.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
Very cool. And this is gonna run through?
Through beginning of August. Yeah, so I plan on going out next weekend. Yeah,
As long as
so-
there's no rain.
Yep, as long as there's no rain. Exactly. So basically the summer's divided up into 10-day periods. Being in the Northeast, we start in period 4. So we have 7 banding periods throughout the season that we go through. The idea is at the beginning you're going to catch adults that are breeding in the area, and then by the end you're going to be catching the juveniles that they fledge out. So, yeah.
That's very cool.
So how often do you get a bird that is already banded?
So it does happen. It's somewhat rare. Eventually, you know,
Eventually
if we
it
do
would
this
be
next year,
more, yeah.
Yeah, we'll catch probably birds that we banded, and I'm sure next weekend we'll probably catch, you know, one of the birds that we banded. But we'll probably see all 6 of those birds over the season again.
Yeah.
So they have really high site fidelity, so they'll come back year after year to the same spot to breed,
Mm-hmm.
as long as they are forested. So.
So would you be thinning out the woods?
So with the program, it's potential to thin out the woods to kind of create different ages in the growth, because it is all evenly aged and all around it's pretty evenly aged. So getting some more early successional stuff might be an option. So we'll definitely work with the forester in that area. It may be too that we end up going a little bit further down Ball Hill Road and doing cuts in that area versus this section, because this section's actually really nice. It doesn't have any invasives or anything like that, so it would be a shame to like cut it and then all of a sudden open it up to, you know, bittersweet or, you know, knotweed or something like that, but.
Yeah, no knotweed.
No.
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 And
Right.
You're still looking for volunteers?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So-
Yep, so if anyone's interested, please email conservation@townofberlin.com. I can get you on an emailing list, and I'll send out an email, you know, the night before we go out, just so you guys know for sure that we'll be there.
And then, is there any like skills or knowledge someone needs to have to be a volunteer?
Nope, you're more than welcome to come. We'll put you to work, we'll
Mhm.
have you write data, scribe for us, whatnot, and eventually, you know, if you're interested, we'll train you on how to, you know, work with the birds, you know, handle them, extract them from nets, that sort of thing, so. Yeah, so this weekend, AJ Moses came up with his granddaughter Gracie. She got to release an ovenbird, so she was pretty
Aw.
excited about that. Get to be the launch pad. I think AJ was pretty excited too to be a launch pad as well.
Mhm.
And then Carol, I want to say O'Connell,
Yeah.
Yep.
she came out too, and was pretty excited to be a launch pad, you know.
That's very cool.
Nice.
What's the time frame between when you put the nets down and then you retrieve the birds?
So we check the nets probably every half hour or so.
Okay.
It's kind of a constant loop. I think it takes us a half hour to check the nets, so it might be like every hour that we
Oh, okay.
kind of go out. Yep.
So you're not, yeah, I figured you weren't leaving them up for like a
No.
extended period of
No.
time before you were checking them, but I
Yep.
was just curious.
Yep.
Is that why the direction said bring a chair?
Yep, that's why the
Okay.
director is like, bring a chair, because it might be a while before we come back. That's why I was like, also, just hang up by the table. I'll be back eventually. I kind of spread it out nice and far, you know, at a 10 miles on my
Wow.
watch by the end of the day, or the end of the maps day.
pretty good.
So I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get some exercise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're catching and monitoring the birds to help inform a forestry management plan.
Exactly.
And then the forest management plan both helps sort of overall the health of the forest, but it mentioned earlier on that there's some grants, there would be grants available to help implement the plan.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of like how much forestry management plan costs to implement and how much that would be grants for
so
so
I
much?
saw the grants go up to, I want to say like $20,000.
Okay.
So they're willing to reimburse 75% of it. So
Okay.
we would have to front the first 25% of it, and then they would
Mhm.
cover the rest, kind of thing.
And that some money, we're probably looking at CPA, or I sadly say I don't know all the sources of funds for conservation. I know you have some sources of funds.
Yeah, so we have open space as well as an
Okay.
option, though we have kind of dwindled that one with Horseshoe Pond, but eventually we'll build
Right.
it back up.
Right.
And then baby CPA.
Yep.
So right now is the focus just Ager Woods, and then you'll move around to other conservation places in town, or?
Potentially.
Okay, next year.
Probably a few years out.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, with my current work schedule, I think I could only run one map station, and they want you to run this for at least 5 years. At least IDP wants you to at least run it for 5 years to get valuable data out of it for them. So we also submit this data to IVP, and they'll analyze it too, and factor it into all those other map stations you saw, and just get a general of what bird populations are doing throughout the country, kind of thing.
And the biggest bird you've caught on accident?
On accident, caught a red-tailed hawk. It's pretty much the
Oh.
net kind of failed and fell on it.
Oh,
Ooh.
Yep, it was definitely interesting trying to extract him, but
I've got a bunch of
Yep.
turkeys in my yard if you want me to
Good
bring
set.
one up.
Yep.
just saying.
The red tail hawk get banded and released?
Sadly, I didn't have bands big enough for
Oh,
it, but
okay.
it did just get
If you
released.
did,
Some
it would've
photos,
been, yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Yep. Yep. We've caught barred owls when we're trying to do solids, and we've put bands on those guys. So in the fall, I'll probably be coming to you guys to propose a solid banding program at one of the conservation areas in town. So.
What's wrong?
Good.
Great.
Very cool.
Any other questions?
No, this
Post pictures,
sounds
Maddie.
great.
Up
Oh,
on
yeah,
the, up on the
definitely gonna-
website,
Yep.
post pictures.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yep,
Well, it'd be
so-
kinda cool, cause everyone has birds in their backyard, so it would be nice to be like, hey, I got a,
Yeah.
I
Right.
thought it was a wren,
Yeah.
and oh look, it's a,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, if you know anyone that's interested in birds, tell them to come on out.
Have you reached out to like the Girl Scouts? Cause there's one Girl Scout who's like very, very active, and I don't know if she'd be,
Yeah, we
I'll
have-
shoot you her mom's
Okay.
name.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be great. Yeah, eventually it would be great if we could get involved with the schools, get some of the high schoolers out that are, in the environmental club and get them involved. Sort of thing too.
Some of us that have farms that unfortunately have a lot of dead birds that show up. Now, if they're banded, do you wanna know that? Like if I get
Yep.
Yeah.
cause we have quite a population of birds that meet their demise at the farm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you
So
ever
if
find
they're-
anything with a band,
Okay,
you can, if you just Google banded bird, it'll be one of the first websites that pop up, and you can say report a band,
okay,
and it'll tell you exactly where it was banded.
because there's definitely, it's been an issue before that a lot of us had a lot of birds show up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, with the barn swallows and stuff nesting in the barns.
We had a lot of dead ones.
Yeah. Yeah, that does happen.
All right, well, thank you very
Well,
much.
Thank you very much. That was very informative, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yep. Thanks.
And the next thing on our agenda is a report from our highway facilities superintendent.
Oh, Fred, you have to come up to the front.
Yeah, sort of the chair there, sorry.
Is this for,
This is for Roger, you're doing this.
this is for both May and June, right? Or no, April and May.
Yeah,
Yeah,
April and May, but
I won't go through the old business, 'cause
Right.
everyone got a copy.
yep, yep.
So we actually, we've been continuing with the trees in town, the hazard trees. We're actually gonna be having a tree hearing with National Grid this month for all the trees they tagged and things like that. So that's coming in the 22nd. I believe we'll be hosting that. Just this morning we were out, we did a couple more. The potholes are still ongoing. There was some tree debris that's been lacking, been picked up, so we spent 2 days out, we did that. We started sweeping back in April. That stopped because that's when we had to start the spring cleanups of all the buildings and the town fields and things like that. At the same time, we were trying to winterize, put the trucks away, clean them up. Let's see. I should have rehearsed this before I showed up.
No problem.
So we actually did a little bit of cleanup here in the Senate Cemetery that the Cemetery Commission been trying to get done for a while. And the perfect time came because one of the neighbor trees fell into the vault area. So we went in to clean that up, and we just spent the rest of the day there cleaning up around the vault. We ended up fixing the stone wall right there at 62 where a car hit it. That wasn't included on the police report, so no one made off on that. The guys helped out on Earth Day. It actually worked out really good because according to the conservation, I think it was conservation that set up. The section of Route 62 we did hadn't been done in a few years. So we took it upon from Rural Road down to 495. We kind of split the group. One started here, went down, the other started, the other one came back. It was nasty tick season. It was just
Oh.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it actually worked out good. Everyone had fun.
Mhm.
I think. No one complained.
Much.
Yeah, much.
Much.
And it's amazing what you find. It's always a treat. So the sanitary inspection was done. Megan the girl that actually does our sampling and things like that, she's our representative through Whitewater and for DEP. She had things on her end she had to do. Basically, all we had to do was make sure we get the public drinking water sign put up for them. Everything else was all in their hands, whether it was putting the reports together. One big thing they noted was that the report, even though I believe Mary prints a copy and posts the reports here, they weren't posted at all. So,
At the library? Oh.
so now they're posted inside the door on the
Mhm.
bulletin. So those were done. Norrell Fire Alarm Company did come in and replace the panel at the 1870. It went well. They did it in a day once they had all the right parts. And the only thing we did to help our other departments was we believe we got the final move done for the boiler house. Everything should be out of there for what they needed, whether it be the trash. So all that was moved out, and we just moved a desk out for Sandra at the 1870.
Moved it out or moved it in?
We
The
actually
one in the
moved it
front?
out. Yes.
The one that was all
one-
broken and I mean, as soon as you come,
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's been removed and relocated.
to the trash.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. May was obviously busy for us because everything was leading up to Memorial Day weekend. Even though we didn't have a parade, it's still something we always do. We make sure we try to get the center of town done. It was kind of a rough month because people coming in June and need to start using up their vacation time. So there was the week leading up to Memorial Day. We had 2 guys out for 2 days. And we still have a lot of stuff to get done. But we did get it done. The line stripers will be in town within the next 2 weeks. We finally just got on the schedule for them. We did receive a public records request. I'd never had to put one together before. I don't know much about it. But we got it done. They were looking for anything to do that we bought for traffic signs, control devices, paint, anything like that, barricades. And we were fortunate that our stuff was easy to find, and we don't buy very much of that stuff. So it was, I guess it went well. I didn't get any feedback from whoever requested it. So we finally got the pavement done, the wrap pavement for Brigham and Jones. And of course, that happened the same day they wanted to do the Alice training at Tohoto. And when Steve called and he's like, oh my God, can you do it? We have to. If this was a real life day event, we gotta make it work. So we did. We sent 2 guys, 2 trucks, and worked out pretty good. Some unhappy Boylston residents, but it was for them to deal with. But it went well for the first actual walkthrough walk. So the pavement got done. We started backfilling the road edges there. Sweeping continued throughout town.
I have to tell you, it's so smooth now.
It's so much better. It was long overdue.
Oh my goodness. And you can't even tell between Brigham and Bailey,
Oh,
where
for the
you
join.
met them.
And for that, we actually borrowed 2 pieces of equipment. We borrowed the grinder that the town of Clinton had on their machine, but their machine was getting ready to be traded in, so we were able to get one from a family in town. A contractor in town had one with high flow, so we borrowed the 2 pieces and made it work down there.
Like butter.
Yeah.
It's like butter.
So, well, that's one thing I told them. I says, in the past, all the pavement joints, you feel a bump. I
Yeah.
said, I don't want to feel a bump. You don't feel a bump on the highway, I don't want to feel a bump on the back road.
Yeah,
So they did really good.
they did.
Yeah, same on Crosby and Jones. I can take that corner now at much higher speed than I
Oh.
could.
Don't say
All the
that, they won't do your road.
Right. That's why sometimes I don't want roads fixed, because it encourages people to go faster, If
Right.
you're gonna lose a tire or an axle, maybe you'll go slower.
Correct.
Yeah. And some people do say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, don't pave my road. It's like, well, eventually we will because your neighbor is complaining.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, it is tough.
Mhm.
We've already been questioned several times, why aren't you doing this road?
Yeah.
Because this road needs it more.
Right.
And it's just, it's a hard thing to tell people, no, you can't get it.
You're on the list.
Yeah.
Too bad you're at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, it works out good because we just found out the RAP funding doesn't expire this month. So there's no push to try and get everything else done.
Mm.
So they're actually going to be doing a lump sum because we've spent it but haven't requested it back yet because we have don't have the invoice. So they'll be issuing the town the lump sum for the $143,000 and change. But we still have to submit our reimbursement slips. You know,
Mhm.
almost going back to show them that the money was spent where it was spent.
Right.
But now we can stop breathing down the contractor's neck a little bit on the
Yes.
invoices, now that we just have that money, which is
Yes.
good.
That
And there's
was a
more
big
chapter
one.
90 money then available because we are able to access that RAP funding. It's not gonna go away
Mhm.
June
Yeah.
30th, so it's really good.
Yeah,
Good.
so between that and finding out that the cemetery clause was taken off, it was kind of a big relief. There was
Mhm.
no crunch time,
Oh.
so
Mhm.
that worked out good.
Mm-hmm.
And then just leading up to the end of the month, we just made sure that all the crosswalks got painted and things like that. There is news now from the South Street Bridge. So Olivia reached out. They had their wetland scientists down there. They flagged on the wetlands.
Is that where the blue ribbons are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so they did all the flagging there. The next people to come in are the geotechnical engineers, and then they're gonna have the test borers come in. All that will be happening this month. So there'll be a day, they were only gonna try to do it in one lane, but I told them we can just shut that section of road down like we did for repairs. We don't have to worry about people coming around.
Yeah.
So there'll be a day coming up that we're gonna end up shutting that section down. And they'll set that boring machine up. Bless you.
Thank you.
And when is it that you think that it might have to be closed?
It's gonna be more towards the end of the month.
Okay.
Somewhere in the 20s.
After school's out.
I'm hoping. If not, we'll just convince them to do it later in the morning and finish up earlier.
Or just call the school, they'll go a different way.
Yeah. You know, that's what was challenging for the school bus from Brigham.
Right.
Yeah, that was good. Between that and the railroad never called me back, because you're supposed to be so far from it. And the supervisor, Tony Lewis, never called me back a week and a half earlier.
Hmm.
So I called him again that day. I got no message. I called the foreman that we know, and he's like, Tony has to call you back. Keep calling him, sending text message. Matter of fact, when we hang up, I'm going to call him and tell him to expect your phone call.
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and I says, you know, Tony, I called you a week and a half ago. You know, I got a paver showing up in 2 hours. I says, you know, do I need a flagger for the railroad? Well, you know, as long as you're 25 feet from the railroad tracks. I was like, oh. And he's like, how close do you think you are? I says, we're within 6. I says, when you came through and did your upgrade, you know, you kind of made a valley, so we're kind of like lapping onto yours to try and even it off a little better. And he's like, okay. So then he gave me someone else's number to call, so I called him. We didn't have a train due until 5 o'clock that afternoon, because they had a test car on the tracks. So all I had to do was let him know when everyone was clear. And then I told him, well, we're going to be back at it Monday. And he's like, all right, just do the same thing Monday. So I called him as we were getting there, and I was like, hey, listen, we're on that road now. Oh, yeah, you're fine. Won't be anything till 6. Before we finished, that gentleman actually came out and sat there and waited for us to finish.
Wow.
Which was great, because we got to talk to the guy that has the maintenance of the trail from Framingham to Fitchburg. Real nice guy, very easy to work with. So,
They've been down there a lot, on South and Jones,
yeah.
lots of cars.
They were
And-
sitting there, I think, one day, a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, I feel for him, because he was saying the railroad, he needs like 80,000 ties or 8,000 ties or something like that to do this certain section of work, and they could only give him like so many hundreds. And he's like, what do you want me to do with that? Like, that's 4 sections of rail, but we need more.
Hmm.
So they got it tough too.
Yeah.
And that's it for our bridge stuff. The only other thing they've been working on are the jail cell toilets, bringing those back online. So what happened was they replaced the original parts that they had the problem with. And then, so that got replaced. Now that's working, and then the next part is not working so well. So they changed that part, and now 1 or 2 of the push buttons that actually activate them are causing a vacuum leak. So now they ordered those ones.
But that'll get them all to pass, right? Because those habitually fail
Yeah.
on
Right.
Erically every year.
Well, between that and the water temperature. The water, it never seems to get hot down there in a certain amount of time. So if someone catches I probably shouldn't say that to you. If someone catches the inspector up front, someone will run out back and let the water run for a bit until the hot water comes out through the garden hose, and then they shut all down. Oh, we didn't know you were here. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's on camera.
Secret's out.
But that's what we
Right.
try to do. That's basically all we have for the 2 months.
All right.
I apologize for not getting April's in on time.
I thought we
Things
had
happen.
it. No?
I wasn't sure.
I think you did.
Yeah,
I think we did.
We did. I
Yeah, you
don't think
came,
br-
there was an incident or something that you weren't supposed to be here, and then you showed up.
You went on a mutual aid and then you came.
All right, so
Yeah.
we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, all right.
We forgot.
All right. Well, at least we got a refreshment.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
So any questions?
Yeah,
for-
you touched on it, but maybe more for the record, like, because it was, I was asked about it, I saw it on social media too. How you go about determining sort of what roads to pave, and if people have input on
So-
what roads to pave, how they can,
So
Do it.
what we started doing, which
Yeah.
I'm sure Dennis started in the past, he started a card index file,
Right.
almost like a recipe box, with all the streets. And
Mhm.
every time something was done, it was all written down. That's how I got the thing about Pleasant Street, one other thing.
Right.
So basically, it's like a 15 to 20 year life cycle of a road.
Right.
And that's what we're basing it on. Like Bailey Road, that's been done since I started.
Mhm.
But we've never done anything on Brigham. That section of Jones, we've never done anything on. The lower section they had when the bridge was redone.
Mhm.
And it's I can't really call it out, but so in the past, there's only been like an inch and a half of binder, inch and a half of top. So it gives you 3 inches overall over all the cars and the trucks coming nowadays. Those were just overlays, but when
Mhm.
we do Highland Street and Randall, we're actually going to be putting down 2.5 inches of binder, an inch and a half of top. Thinking in the future, as long as you have a base that's strong and stays, because you can go with a bigger binder rock,
Mhm.
which will give you a better base. Later on down the years down the road, you can actually plane it.
Mhm.
Right now, we don't have enough material that we can plane
Mhm.
and just put a fresh rear surface down. So what we're setting up now, hopefully will help them in the future, with maintenance-wise. And there are so many treatment options now. We've taken a couple pavement management classes that I didn't know all this
Mhm.
stuff existed. Whether you could put a fog seal down, where basically just puts more oil back into it, like the old oil and sand.
Mhm.
Similar, just not as aggressive. That puts oil back in it, will give you more life out of
Mhm.
it. This crack sealing now, we're gonna try to get off the ground. We do have a crack sealing machine, but for us to try to do as much out there in town, it's not. Like,
Mhm.
our unit, we can maintain it, or do small areas. So we're hoping to have a company come in with some of the RAP funding and get some of the bigger roads. But that's usually how we've been basing it on. I don't
Right.
know how the previous superintendents, other than, like, we had to do Barnes Hill because we tore up quite a bit of it when we did drainage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And actually, Jim and I were just up on your road,
Mhm.
looking at the drainage for up there. If we get that off the ground this year, it'll sit for a year and then that road will be done.
I think Bailey was done once since I've moved in, since '84.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's not in that bad a shape compared
Not
to
at all.
Brigham was terrible.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, the trees we were cutting today were up on Autumn Ridge, Estabrook, and just, driving around, I was like, oh wow, this is a crack seal candidate.
Right.
And then when I got out and went walking around, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's not that old, and it's already like
No.
really coming apart.
Yep. So Surrey Hill Road's not all that old. I mean, it was done after I moved in, and
Yeah.
it has spots that are not great.
And actually, that was an overlay.
Right.
Because I have a picture of a regular Schlage household key,
Right.
like this, and it wasn't even halfway up the key. The theory back in the day was thin to win.
Right.
You can go further if you spread it thinner.
Right.
But
And do it
doesn't
again
stay.
sooner.
Right.
Yeah, whenever
Denny
he's-
did pull a boulder out of Bailey Road, though.
Yeah.
Something caved in, and I think you probably could put your foot down in the hole, like about a foot or two. And so we called him, and he came out, and he pulled these giant boulders out of the road, and then had to fill it up and patch it.
Well, when the grinder came by, right around Mr. Hendrick's house, the mailbox over there, nobody knew there was a manhole. So the grinder came over the top, absolutely annihilated it, and it's like, hey.
Mhm.
So while they were doing that, we were trying to rebuild it. But we know it's there now. And we marked it with the mailboxes.
Yeah, Yeah, because when
Yep.
it rains down Lyman, I'll take the broom and go down where it hooks onto Crosby
Yeah.
because of all the bikers. And so I'm like pushing all the rocks and the debris. But yeah, both sides.
Yeah, and that too, what we were looking at today, we're actually gonna try to, we're not gonna be able to connect into that basin right on the corner. So we're actually gonna start on the opposite side of the road and run the trunk line down to that edge. So the basin will be on the opposite side and then come up and cross because there's a ledge crop just below your place. We're hoping to not on your side of the road.
Great.
And we're gonna start one there and go up. And then, once we're above, I think it's McGowan's. It's between McGowan's and the next one up, there'll be another set of structures.
Did that answer
Do
your
you know
question?
when,
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
National Grid is gonna do their tree cutting? Have they started?
No, they haven't, because they gotta have the tree hearing.
Okay.
So that's what we're gonna have the hearing.
Do we do that, or do you do that?
I'll do it.
Okay.
And they're gonna take care of all the posting. They're gonna put it in the paper. They're
We
gonna
do-
put
we
it
do
in
the
two
poll
or three
hearings.
different places.
Yeah, we do the poll hearings. Fred can do the tree hearings.
Yeah. And we're gonna put it, I believe Mary was gonna put it on My Town Government, maybe, wherever meetings are
Oh,
posted.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
probably.
Do that.
So that way that'll cover like whoever
Mhm.
spots needed. He's gonna post it at the library as well,
Mhm.
in case anyone goes in there. And that's gonna be June 22nd at one in the afternoon, 1 to 3-ish.
And that's for National Grid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so all the trees that are tagged are the trees that National Grid's
Mhm.
arborist came around through. The reason why it took so long, he started actually in January, second week of January. Someone in his group came in, so they double teamed him. One guy left, so he now has to take on the rest of the job of the town. Someone in a different town had their own section, they left the company. So he was trying to do like 2 or 3 different communities. As of the first time we spoke, when I got the list, there were other trees, because he has to reach out to personnel people if anything's on private property, and he has to get their permission. So there were people he still hadn't had a chance to reach out to yet. So we just got the revised the list last Tuesday, I believe it was.
Okay.
Is-
Check
anyway,
by
the-
town government if you're interested in the tree hearings.
Right, in the tree hearings, but could the list of trees be sent to the select board?
Yes, I can
Okay.
scan that in and send it.
Yeah.
Sure, we'll get
I mean,
that
just,
to you.
I'd like to know them,
Yeah.
just more curiosity than desire to edit it.
And actually, only one person has questioned the flags. Mainly, what are they?
Okay.
All I can say, because they have blue ones out, they have red ones out. We don't know if the blue is like a trim,
Right.
or if the red one is complete. And I said, well, for the majority of them, they're red tags, and if you look at the tree, it's dead.
Uh,
So I'm assuming that's a removal.
Yeah.
The other one may just be a trim.
Mhm.
And this group that's coming in is separate from, remember years ago, we had Stanley Tree coming in town? Same thing, they were contracted by the grid. That's like a different group. So these guys are mainly worried with the transmission line. And then the other group that comes in does the pruning and trimming like that. So when they do come in, it's a one-stop shop. They'll come in, they'll chip it, they'll have a log truck, so they'll clean everything up, which is awesome. Because when Stanley came in, they did all the chipping, we picked up all the
I was
wood
gonna say,
Yeah.
they leave everything on the side of the road and then you have to go back.
Yeah,
Yep.
and pick it up. And not many people ask us for wood anymore.
Right.
We used to always drop it off wherever people wanted it, if we were in their neighborhood, same with wood chips. If we were chipping just today,
Right.
we dropped a little wood chips up on Autumn Ridge because we were up there. But, yeah, so if anyone ever wants plywood, wood
Right.
chips, we usually always have them.
All right. Okay, well, thanks.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Fred, very much.
See you next month.
Yeah, see you next month.
All right, on to the town administrator report.
Okay, we have a lot going on. Rec court reconstruction project, if you drove by it today, we are getting some striping, I hear, and painting out there, which I haven't had a chance to see yet.
I couldn't see it from the road.
I didn't see it from the road, any striping or painting. There were definitely a couple people still walking around when I was driving by.
Okay. That's what I heard.
20 minutes ago.
This is what happens when
Yeah,
I go
yeah,
off
yeah.
of what I
Yeah, yeah.
hear, so maybe
Yeah.
not. But it's moving in that direction.
Mhm.
The court colors have been selected. They were selected late on Friday. The big question is erosion control measures, because what was originally discussed in the bid, and Bob Holmes is an engineer, I'm not going to pretend to be one, but there's basically kind of a tapered edge going off to the pond that is larger than what it was originally anticipated to be, now that they've gone out and they've, looked at everything and graded it. So they're trying to figure out what the best option is to, level everything, once everything was leveled, to figure out how to kind of deal with that drop off going down toward the pond. So my favorite company suggested that we do riprap, which, if you're not familiar with that, that's sort of like those 3 to 4 inch stones.
Yep.
That kind of interlock. The concern with that was, if you have kids or, they're fishing in the pond, you're standing on stones that are not necessarily 100% balanced. Bob was talking about the possibility of a retaining wall back there. Then someone could sit on a retaining wall, a little bit more stable than standing on riprap. So we're waiting on quotes on both of those. I have put him in contact with Conservation to ask what their preferred method of attack would be for this approach. So everything is still moving forward. We're a couple weeks away from dealing with the back end anyways. So hopefully that will not slow us down too much. So that's where we're at with tennis, recreation rather. Cable hybrid meeting room upgrades. I'm just waiting to get the executed contract back from the vendor. They have informed me with the ordering and arrival of the equipment, they can start about the end of July. So that's actually a little bit quicker than I was thinking because of all the supply chain issues. I really wasn't sure, so that's not terrible. Very good news about the roof here. We received 5 bids for the roof and reviewed them for compliance. The low bidder came in at $119,000 for this piece. And one thing to keep in mind is the number was higher because originally the bid was written to include the fire station roof as well. And we split it out for just right now to focus on this piece. Checked reviews, everything looks great. So that's on the agenda for later on this evening. And this is a smaller contractor that's based out of Dudley. He has indicated he can start work within 4 to 6 weeks. So, of the notice to proceed. Another piece of good news to report, we have reached a tentative agreement on fire union negotiations as of this morning.
Yay.
Yes, so we will have an executive session next Monday to discuss the agreement, and I'm hoping we can get it wrapped up by the end of June, and then we won't have to do retro pay, which would make June very happy. So June and June is where we're at there. Community garden fence has gone out to bid, so we are moving forward with that. There will be a site visit on June 12th, and quotes are due on the 21st. If you see any staking or marking going on out there, the garden manager is actually going to be marking out where the fence will be going. If you remember, this is a Community Preservation Act project that was just approved by town meeting in May and estimated to be at about $45,000. As Fred mentioned, road crack sealing bid we're working on with our RAP funding, which we got $141,106. I actually have probably 2/3 of that bid drafted. I just need to do a little bit more work on it. And then my goal is to get this out, if not in this Thursday's Central Register, next Thursday's. The other thing we've been dealing with is the radio project. As Chief Shartner mentioned at the last meeting, the tower has changed hands, and the company that bid is no longer on the list of vendors that can work on that tower. So I actually called the state procurement office. They have a 30B hotline and for procurement. And I said, what should we do? Because I've never encountered this before. They said, you're not alone. They said, because of delays in supply. Remember, we ordered these antennas back in November. They said lots of towns are running into very odd issues. What they recommended was we take possession of the equipment, which we have, pay for the equipment and terminate the installation portion of the contract and go back out to bid for those services.
Mm.
So that is what we will be doing, and we have to look at who the preferred vendors are on the list and contact them, get an idea of prices. If it looks like it's gonna be under 10, we can just use best practices, 10 to 50. We've gotta do advertised quotes because that is construction, so that actually falls under 149. And personnel, there's a lot going on. We met a couple times over the last few weeks looking at job ads for various positions. And I have a few more departures to unfortunately report. Our building inspector, Richard Hanks, will be retiring effective August 1st. And today is Officer Molly Plant's last day. She is headed to the Framingham PD. Both have been a huge asset, have huge assets for the town, so those are pretty significant losses. We will be working on advertising those positions, along with end of the year process and closeout, which will be keeping the accounting office and the treasurer's office quite busy. And the last thing was ARPA, which is actually next, and I don't have much because we're still waiting for quotes back from everybody. But everybody was over the moon about their tentative funding allocations. I made it clear that it's conditional upon bringing quotes back to the select board. And everyone's out there diligently working on getting their quotes. And that's what I have.
Okay. So that was your update on ARPA too?
Yes.
All
I tried to just kill two items, two birds with one stone.
Yes. All right.
Awfully violent.
Awfully violent. I just tried to
Actually, we've been just
Yeah,
talking about birds.
attack. I was gonna say attack two items. I'm like, that doesn't sound any better. So never mind.
Yeah. So we'll move on to new business then and discuss the date, time, and need for a fall town meeting.
Well, before we do that, I have a couple questions for Kristen on her
Oh,
report.
I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
quite all right. So Kristen, with the list of unfortunate recent departures, what role, if any, will the three of us be having for interviews or exit processes? Because obviously you can't do it all, personnel can't do it all, so what is the plan to have all, any, one, two of us involved with those coming in or those going out?
So I have one exit interview scheduled actually Wednesday already. And I will be scheduling the second one. I just got that notice last week, so I have a little bit of time because that's the one going for August. I have been working with the personnel committee on the job postings and the job ads. So I have typically and what I've done is move forward and had the department head do the exit interview. If it is a department head, then I would do the exit interview. So I think we're pretty well covered from that standpoint.
So what about interviews, those coming in?
So interviews for those coming in. I don't have much coming in right now. I don't know where the assessors are at. I want to check with them because I know they posted for that position, and I'm not sure where they're at. I know that's their appointment. They've asked if I would be involved. We're still kind of figuring out what the final date will be on Mary's position. It's an October date, so I'm not ready to interview for that position yet until we get the exact date with Worcester Regional, and we know when we're going to have that. But we can certainly put a committee together for that position. And I'm trying to think.
I actually mentioned to you that when I stopped in to say, I heard Richard, that you're going to be leaving us, and he said he would be happy to help with looking at resumes, talking with Kristen about, questions, and I mean, he's like an expert, so it would
He's
be
so
nice
good.
if he could be involved,
Mm-hmm.
as
I
much
would
as he's
love
willing.
to have him involved, and I'm
What
not
do we know?
sure.
I mean,
Typically
Right.
the process I'm used to is using department heads and employees to do the interview process because those are the people that work day to day. But if there's a different process that's been done here, I'm open to that
Right,
as
I was
well.
gonna say,
we would interview them in the
Yeah.
end.
I would not, I don't believe there's a select board role at any of those positions.
There is for building inspector, for building
Commissioner.
commissioner.
Right, so for department heads, that's one where the select board, I recommend an appointment or do a notice of appointment for the other ones. For the department head, I bring forward candidates until you decide you want or don't want them.
Right.
So that's according to the TA bylaw.
Okay.
And then the last question that I had, you talked about the finance team to talk about year end. So where are we in terms of like all the reserve fund transfers, you know, especially like for legal, you know, what happens if we don't use it? Where does it go back? You know, how are we? Are we good, bad, on track?
Well, I know that we have one that's gonna need to be done on the 26th. Right now, Finance Committee is only meeting on the 26th.
So a need for another reserve fund transfer?
Yes, for a building,
Okay.
because of the toilets.
Ah,
It's putting them over.
yep.
So we are gonna need that, but as of right now, knock on wood, that's the only one I know of, other than I don't know what the legal one looks like.
We've got 13,000 left and we have 3 bills we're expecting, so I'm
That one-
hoping we'll be
You don't know.
just about
Yeah.
covered, but it's hard to say.
And,
So we've had a lot with fire, you know,
Right,
union
yep.
negotiations and,
and then if we make a reserve fund transfer and it doesn't get fully used, that just flows to free cash like any
Correct.
unspent
Yep.
line item would.
yep.
Okay. All right, those are my two.
Okay. All right, then. Discuss the fall town meeting possibility?
Okay, so what I did was I've been kind of collecting a list of items that could go on a potential fall town meeting. And they are in your file here. I have up to 11 potential items. The first would be an adjustment of the operating budget if need be. The main need I would see for that would be if there's a need from the, if we need to shift some line items around within the fire budget to address negotiations. I don't know if we are really necessarily gonna have to add very much funding, but we may have to add a small amount of funding to fund that new contract that's coming in, because that contract is effective July 1. And my practice has always been that you don't put money in, because if you know, it's kind of like tipping your hand and saying how much money you're willing to pay if you put the money in advance. So that's why we may have to do a adjustment there, and anything else that could come up. River Bridge Development Agreement, 4th modification, which we're cranking along towards. We're getting there. We have a meeting, I believe, Wednesday with the Sennies, and hoping to have that wrapped up and get that on a meeting. Also, the earthworks and like-kind soils bylaws, amending, consolidating those bylaws, I would like to see. Funding capital stabilization, which we did not do back in Maytown meeting, because we left it on the table because of the public safety stabilization funding for the fire truck. We didn't know if that was going to be available. So that would be out of 23 free cash. No, I mean, I'm not looking at 24, but
Not yet.
yeah, nope, not there yet. Try not to stress out June. One of the items that you had said take off Maytown meeting, put on a later town meeting, was the discussion of funding OPEB. We have actuarial numbers we should have within, I want to say, almost any day now.
Yeah, he had a couple of questions that he had to get back to them to complete.
Yep, and so what we want to do is, once we have the numbers and an amended policy, have the insurance advisory committee bring that back forward before the select board for further discussion. I've also shared the draft policy with the personnel committee, and once that's information is amended and available, we'll share the rest of that information with you as well. One of the things that we've talked about is a detail account for fires, fire details, which we have for police detail but not for fire, and it's a slightly different setup than your typical 53.5 revolving fund. It actually has to be set up in a slightly different way. So, and typically you have to put a little bit of seed money in there, and then it starts to be able to revolve after that. So you'd be looking at somewhere, June and I talked about maybe about $5,000 that you would put in there just to get that going for your fire details. And that's really kind of the most appropriate way to do a detail account, because then you have your money coming in, then you have your money going out to pay
Do they have one in,
the
for
officers.
police?
They do.
Okay,
Yep.
I wasn't sure.
What would be an example of a fire detail?
Fire watch. So they're doing work on a building, and they have to turn off the alarms for some reason, and so.
They had to do one at the school not too long ago.
Yep,
Okay.
but like if a company's doing work on the electrical on a building and they have to shut the fire alarms off, depending on what it is,
Very rare, it
doesn't happen
on
all the
regular
time.
basis.
But yeah, you never know.
Bonfire?
Well, what?
You've got-
Bonfire?
No bonfires.
No, I mean, the school
But yeah.
school has bonfires
Oh, do they?
occasionally.
Okay.
Mostly Boylston probably goes to
The
take care
bonfires.
of the one at Tohoto.
Right.
Oh, okay. I had like a bonfire ban in my previous community, so that's why I'm like, no bonfires. The other thing that I'd like to talk to you about is the bylaw that requires the town meeting warrants to be mailed to all households, because it is costly.
I thought we took care of that.
We
Did
took
we
care
not?
of having to mail the annual reports,
Okay.
but not the warrants. And the
Oh.
warrants still, Mary, was it for the mailing the warrants was almost, what, $4,800?
Yeah, yeah.
For mailing just the warrants for Springtown meeting.
Printing and mailing.
Printing and mailing, just Springtown meeting. So if we're moving in the direction where we're busier and potentially needing to have 2 town meetings a year, that's almost $10,000 to mail warrants.
I just, from a civic engagement standpoint, I think you have to mail it to all households. Have to from an ethical, moral standpoint, maybe not a legal standpoint.
Can I just suggest that
Right.
in my town, they send out a postcard that gives the links for people to go. And in
Mhm.
the alternative, they can come to the town offices and get a paper copy, just like the annual town report.
Yep.
Versus a bulk mailing, and when you go to the post office and people clean out their PO boxes,
Right.
they're all in the trash can.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we can't stop people from throwing things away. I just.
No, I'm just
for-
saying though, it's a,
Yep.
you know, people don't,
I hear you, and there might be a way to word it so that like all people must be notified of the town meeting by mail or something like that, because I really would like to get something to everybody when we do town meetings, because otherwise you start getting, I mean, we already get the same people over again, but the new people who move to town don't know about it. We just,
Okay.
I would like to continue to mail something,
Okay.
and maybe it is something small.
bigger size postcard, it's like
Right.
a half a sheet
Yeah.
of
Yep.
cardstock I've seen on bright paper.
Yeah.
Rather than a
They
30-page
still go in
warrant.
the post office trash in Harvard too.
Yeah.
But at least,
At least you're getting something, and then you
Right.
can put them in a lot of locations. What I've done before is like library, senior center. You could do general store.
Yep.
You know, do here, do more advertising through websites, social
Right.
media, all of those things too. So.
We're not allowed to use code red to announce a town meeting, right?
Yes, you can, because we have a general code red that's not an
Right,
emergency
not an
one.
emergency. I'd want to think and discuss that fully, because we do a lot of neat things in town. I'd like us to do more things in town. If the idea that all of them would go out as code red, people would stop listening to the text messages
Yeah.
and start turning off their phones. But if we limited it to a handful of big things like town election, town meeting,
Yep.
general election in November,
Well, if we did some kind of mailing,
Yep.
perhaps a postcard, I don't know that we'd have to use code red anyway.
Right.
I'll tell you,
Well-
Code Red was really, we were unsure about it. We had a resident complain about exactly what you're concerned
Yeah.
about, not knowing about town meeting. And they said, is there a way you can notify everybody? And the
Yep.
police chief said, use the Code Red non-emergency. And we were like, I don't know how people are gonna feel about this. Honestly, people
Yep.
were thrilled.
Yep.
We would send it out the day before,
Mhm.
because you've done all your advertising before. I mean, you could do one a month before, or a week, however you
Right.
want to do it, but we would do always one the day before that says town meetings tomorrow evening.
Right.
You know, you're welcome to come, please show
Right.
up. And
Right.
people really liked that.
And here's a link to click to learn agenda items, other
Correct,
stuff.
visit
Right.
town's
Yeah.
website
Yeah.
for a copy of the warrant, more information, and we do it for the election too.
So we want to hear from you.
Yes.
So call Scott or me.
You can call me too.
or Peg, and let us know
Yeah.
what your opinion is of whether you'd like to still have the warrant mailed to you.
Yeah.
I'd like to save $10,000 if we can do it and still be, like you said,
Yeah.
transparent, open, engaged, making sure we get it to the broadest possible number of people.
Yeah, I mean, this is
So-
a first conversation. I think there could be language that gets to my intent that people are notified. Everyone is notified without necessarily potentially having to mail an 18-page document to everybody.
Right.
So there could be I think there could be
We might
something
be able
that
to
gets
come up with something,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yep. Put our heads together, see what we can come up with.
Mary?
Just two things. Conservation Commission this year moved forward and sent all of the pushes about Earth Day electronically through the superintendent's office, the principals, and had it go out versus paper. So that's the first year they've got off paper. And the other thing is Powderhouse News comes out every 2 months. Victoria's getting ready for the next 2-month edition, and she's gonna put a little placeholder in there just saying, heads up, so that
Right.
people over the summer are aware that there could be a fall town meeting coming up. But the annual was certainly something that could
Mhm.
always go in the Powderhouse News
Mhm.
2 months in advance, and we have a dedicated website. So that I always have one clearinghouse for everything relating to all the spring elections and town meeting. So there could be a dedicated, not changing link, but dedicated one that's town meeting prep, town election prep.
Mm-hmm. Or the same link. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
All right.
And then, this is interesting, Liz, throughout the whole process of doing our negotiations this year and last year, we're technically supposed to do a approval through town meeting for the collective bargaining agreements, which I'll be honest, I've just always included them as part of the budget and not done that type of thing. But it's supposed to be at least kind of identified so that people know where that funding is going to and what it's being allocated for. She said there are a lot of communities that don't do it, but legally you are supposed to do it that way.
What would happen if it failed? See, this would be my worry, is that we have a budget that's done, we have a collective bargaining agreement that's signed by us, and then the town doesn't fund it. We have to pay it anyway, we'd have to find another, so we just tell someone, so sad, too bad, the select board and your union agreed to a contract, you're just not gonna get your pay increase?
That's what I
That would
don't
suck.
understand, so.
Mary?
Money. There'd be no money. It would be subject to town meeting, it's always subject to
Yeah,
town
it
meeting.
is subject to town meeting funding.
Right, which you would include as part of the department's budget. You're not going to do
Right.
it differently, but I guess in the description, we would put what it's for. I am not used to doing it that way. I'd have to get a little more information, but I put
Right.
it on the list because town council pointed it out. So I just want to make sure that if that's something that we really should be doing, that we do it. In my opinion, putting it as part of the budget and putting it in the budget, or doing item 1 on this list, adjusting the operating budget to account for any increases that we might have to make as part of the agreement, would cover us, but Liz seems to have a slightly different take on it. So it's different than I've done it before. And like you said, it makes me a little nervous, because you're committing to something and then saying, well, and it's always subject to town meeting funding appropriation.
Yeah.
But we just need to look into that a little bit more, so. And then the only other ones would be the request that Chief Shartner had on the special legislation to allow the traffic officers to work past the age of 65. I believe there still is a cap at 70, but it would give them another 5 years that they could work as traffic officers. And then if planning board or CPA had any bylaws for projects. So I don't know that I see the need for a fall town meeting every year. I think we're
Right.
catching up on a lot of these projects that are kind of coming to fruition now that I've settled in, the budget's done, I'm able to get things out. There are a few items that I really don't want to wait until May, like River Bridge, which we have
hope.
discussed a bit and will continue to discuss more.
Yeah.
And,
There-
there are some other things that could wait, but I just think this is a lot of work that, if we didn't have to wait a year to do it, could be beneficial.
So I had a list previously, I think it was from 22 or something.
Okay.
And on it was, maybe we've done this already, move funds from CPA and from the affordable housing account into the municipal affordable housing trust. But that's only if the housing trust membership is in place.
Oh, okay.
That was, and I'm assuming we haven't done it yet,
Well, we have
but I
the
can remember.
municipal housing trust in place, but there's some type of recording that has to happen to make it official.
Okay.
And Mary and I were actually just looking at that today. It's like a recording that has to make them a
Yeah.
official trust or
Right,
whatever.
right.
municipal housing
And
trust.
and we still
okay.
might not want to do all of that. If you move the money into that fund, it gives the housing trust the ability to spend it without any further approvals. And we might want to, I mean, I sit on the housing trust, and I
Right.
think having some funds that they can spend without other town approval, but I think like CPA money should follow the same CPA path and not necessarily just be dumped into their
I don't think
Their-
you
their
can do
fund.
CPA.
Huh?
CPA can't be just automatically plugged in.
Oh, good.
You'd have to go through the town meeting
Yep.
process.
Right, so
Right.
be applied for like a project on.
Yeah, that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they can't just,
That-
it's there,
yeah.
but it's not
right.
right there.
Because the housing trust has some money that they're allowed to spend under their authority. It's always like to take advantage of some opportunities, like Conservation Commission has always wanted to be able to do that, but at least the CPA funds. There might be
I
other
think it was a
smaller
list
funds.
actually that
Right.
Margaret had
Yeah.
Okay.
had put together, so I don't, you know, you
And-
may not, if you haven't seen the list, then you probably,
Right.
Yeah, I
And I'm
remember
always-
I saw one list that I worked off of for this past meeting, but maybe I don't have the one that you have, so
Probably
that
not.
would be helpful to see.
well, I kinda just added
Mhm.
what was missing
Oh, perfect.
to your list,
Yep.
so
Perfect.
that's all, I just didn't type it up.
Oh, all right. What else?
You
got?
can run a copy of that if you want.
All right. Or I can take it down. What else did you have?
The only other thing that, you know, you had mentioned to me was, which it sounds like you are involved in, helping to appoint an assessor. You're helping the assessors.
Yes, I met with the board of assessors at their request 2 or 3 weeks ago and offered,
That's the only
my
other thing I had on
assistance.
the list, really,
Yep. All right. Great.
so.
So I'm assuming that these are gonna come back up, and there's costs, obviously, with some of them. Could you, put down what you're thinking about for potential costs and where the money's coming from? So, one, fund OPEB, what are you looking at for the funding amount? Where is that money gonna come from? Where is the continual money gonna come from? Amend, where's another one? Put down there about, regarding the town warrants, what the cost is, where it's coming from. I mean, just so that you can look at these and not just see words on a paper, but see actual potential financial impacts. Obviously, nothing's written in stone, it's not solid, but just to get an idea of how these are going to be funded, how these are going to be spent, and what bucket they're coming out of.
Sure. And we won't have that information on OPEB until we get the numbers back
Understood.
from the actuary.
I imagine by the time we get this ready, this is gonna look like the same annual town meeting. It's gonna have the motion, it's gonna have the rationale behind it, it's gonna have some details.
Right.
Right, this was just to give you an idea
Mhm.
of the articles in case you, just to see if you wanted to move forward. Because
Okay.
I've been kind of, sort of putting that via little things in your head.
Mary, did you have something you wanted to add? You had your hand up a while ago.
No?
Oh, okay. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Uh,
Let's see, where are we here?
Appointment constable.
Oh,
Yep.
no, so are we looking at having a town meeting? Are we because I thought part of this was potentially to find dates.
Yep.
I'm rarely in favor of having an extra town meeting. Although, because we can't seem to ever get to the like-kind soil bylaw at an annual town meeting, the idea that we have a meeting just for that, to get that resolved, would probably overcome my general objections to fall town meetings. But should we start looking at dates? I mean, I don't,
Well, we
maybe no one else,
generally-
maybe no one here wants to have a fall town meeting.
I don't mind, and it'd be nice if it wasn't 40 articles,
Mhm.
like it is sometimes. It wasn't that bad this year, though.
Right.
No. it's a lot more
But,
housekeeping we should get
generally
rid
we
of.
try to avoid December.
Mhm.
Yep, and Eloise didn't really have any concerns this year. Next year, if we needed it next year, she gave me 2 very specific dates. Otherwise, she said she would kill me because
Right.
of the
Presidential
presidential
election.
Yeah.
election. This year, she was not as concerned, but it would be later because we want to try to certify free cash if necessary to fund any article that may need it that's on there. So, I mean, I was we had kind of kicked around like early December as
Oh,
a
that late.
possible.
I've done that.
Very early December.
4th or the 11th are your first Mondays in December.
Okay.
So, I mean,
But
I think there's enough to have a meeting. I don't know that, I think we'd still be tentative at this point, because some of these items, we need to figure out if they can work themselves through in time too, but I just wanted to kind of give you that list of what was out there. The one, like I said, that really sticks out in my mind is the River Bridge one, that I would really like to get resolved. Some of those other ones obviously could wait till spring, but if we were gonna have a meeting, it would be nice to resolve some of the other ones too.
Yeah.
And so if we wanted to have something in early December, and just for the sake of argument, let's pick the earlier of the two dates, the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
We would then potentially want to mail something out to people, whoops, I clicked that one blank, by early November,
Mm-hmm.
which really means that like in October, we're really buttoning down the exact agendas, and all the little details of it.
Right, so you're getting that done basically before, finalizing that before budget season really kicks off is the goal. Which is typically the goal when you do a regular fall town
Sounds like
meeting.
it's just around the corner,
It's,
doesn't
Right,
it?
it
it really
does.
is. Summer, I hate
Yeah.
to say, it goes by too fast.
And so the like-kind soil, like where that at, doesn't seem to ever sort of make progress, like.
It
How do we-
hasn't,
how do
I'll
we
be
kick it?
honest. That's me. So, I have been prioritizing the procurements,
Mhm.
but the good news is, what I have left, I believe, and I'm gonna double check, but I believe I have the crack ceiling and the facilities study. Those are the big ones. And then obviously we have a couple of the CPA projects that are
Mhm.
coming.
Mhm.
Bob Holmes and I have talked a little bit about the pavilion. And there's the land purchase that we do have the attorney working on. What was the third CPA project? Pavilion,
Pavilion.
72 Carter, and wasn't there a third project that they put forward through CPA?
The garden, the
The
fence.
fence. Oh, I don't know why I thought there was another one. So yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, the pavilion is the only other big one for FY24.
Well, we're almost
that
done with
needs
the
to go
tennis
out.
courts, so.
Yep. So that would be that, and the BMS lease move up to
Right.
next. on
Try to
the
get those
list.
done before we have the ARPA fund quotes in and start doing procurements on those.
Yeah, I wanted to wrap up the old
Yep, yeah.
before I
Yeah,
start
no,
going with the new, and old includes the like kind
Mhm.
soils. So.
All right.
Right, so I think I have a better idea probably in a month where we're at. If this looks like it can all kind of come to fruition and make it all in.
Maybe we'll know more about River Bridge too by, what is it, Wednesday?
That would be really helpful.
See how it goes. We haven't talked with them for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, appointment of constable, Kevin Colomi. Colomi, is that how you say that?
Colony.
Colomi.
So there was no constable elected at town meeting. So I don't believe anybody ran. Is that what it was?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so the board gets to appoint until the next election, and Kevin Colmy has kindly agreed to be our constable, should the board be so inclined to appoint.
Do I hear a motion?
I would so move.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
And the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust for a term through June 30th, Elizabeth Stores.
I believe this completes your
Yes,
committee.
it completes the Affordable Housing Trust Committee. It's the last appointment. I think she'll be a great addition. She attended, even though she hadn't been appointed yet, she attended the May meeting.
Nice.
Great,
Yeah.
great. All right. So you're making that motion?
I'll make that motion, yes.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And award the municipal office's roof replacement contract to VOMS Construction.
I spoke a bit about that under the town administrator's report. The contract is in the drive. It is for $119,000, and they can begin within 4 to 6 weeks. We've done reference checks of similar sized projects. They all came back glowing. In fact, several of the companies had used them multiple times, which is always a good sign.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable moving
Yeah.
forward with them.
I will move that we award that contract.
Seconded.
Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you say aye?
I did.
Okay. Just checking. Board questions and comments and liaison updates. You have anything, Scott?
In reading local newspapers.
Oh, boy.
You're turning really red.
No. So, I called it the Star Tribune. Boy, that brings back old memories. The Telegram and Gazette actually had a little article about $180 million in state money for the Central Massachusetts Rail Trail that will to connect Boston to somewhere west of here. And when I Google online sort of Central Mass Rail line, it goes through our town. But went through our town because it's not an active trail anymore. And so we once talked about trying to reform the Rail Trail Committee. I wonder if we might want to add that as an agenda item and a process to bring that back, because there is actually a path that could bypass this town. It could be decided that we want to do that because it seems to have split in Hudson and gone both north and through us. But if we're ever going to make it happen and not necessarily burden Berlin taxpayers with it, there definitely looks like to be some funds available.
And what town would it go through then?
It would go from, I think, Hudson to us to Clinton. And I've actually seen
If it
some.
avoided Berlin.
Oh, if it burned, it would be Boylston and West Boylston to, and around. I didn't pay attention exactly where it reconnected on the other side. But I searched online for, Central Mass Railroad line, and it had a map that showed a split from a map from 50 or 75 years ago or so. But the total trail is supposed to be 104 miles. Let's see if I could actually just read this and it would tell me where it goes. Boston, Northampton. And several places to the east of us and west of us have already been completed. And so it might have been right for the town to pass earlier when there wasn't a lot of pressure to do it. And if there's now funding and some pressure, it probably means much less for the Berlin taxpayers if we decided to do something with it.
It was quoted at a least amount to go through the town of Berlin was $3 million.
Yeah, I thought it was three. Yeah, I thought,
And then
and
when we got a hold of Mass DOT,
yeah.
they kicked it up to almost 7 to 8 million to go through.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, especially trying to get it over 5 corners is gonna cost is
Well,
most of
there
that
you go.
money.
Just 5
But if
corners.
Clinton is planning on renovating that tunnel,
They could get the money.
and getting stuff, and if there's, some state funding to help it out, I think it's at least worth exploring further and
It's
not let it
definitely
just
just-
bypass it.
The money was by far
'Cause-
the
Right.
stepping,
Yeah.
Were you
that
a part
was
of the,
challenge.
you were a part of the
She
group,
was.
weren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
on the
Thought
road,
so.
yeah. The
And they
money-
came out with a nice report on it,
And
and I've seen a couple from the state.
how do you feel about reviving or opening up another can of worms again?
It was a very bad can of worms.
It was a very heated
It was very heated,
discussion.
very controversial, and really, it was the finances.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
Because every time we talked to another, like I said, to start off, it was $3 million.
Right.
Then we went to, we actually had DCR come in,
Mhm.
and everything that was being reported to the town
Right.
was not true. Horses can't use it, and everybody said they could.
Right.
They were told that volunteers could do it, and
No,
they
they
can't.
can't.
Right.
So everything just ended up to be a hornet's nest.
Yep.
Okay.
But really, the finances, if there's money,
Right.
and DOT told me every time you cross a road of any
Yep.
type, you're talking another $1 million.
Yeah. If you look what Concord did on Route 2, I mean, that
Exactly.
is not a cheap bridge they took to go over Route 2.
No.
I also think by waiting the years that we've waited as a town, more rail trail has been done in more towns. There's probably more knowledge on best practices and how to deal
Right.
with minimal
Yeah, but
impact
also
folks.
the price
The-
has raised.
The price has gone up, but also it's clear what the economic benefits can be for doing some of these things. If people the more people actually now want to live near them as a place to commute. You can commute some places with it, and so I think it's just at least worth exploring. I generally sort of would lean thinking it's a neat idea, but it's one of those things. The proof some days is in the pudding, and how much the town would have to put up, and where exactly the route goes.
But that was
and-
the whole thing, was
Right,
the
yeah.
finances, and, I know people didn't really believe that that's what we were looking at, but the finances of building, but then also,
I don't want it in my
we
backyard.
were responsible
Right.
For all the upkeep, the town, not the state.
Right.
The state still owns that.
And it's
The strip.
ongoing
Right.
costs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ongoing to.
Not
and
just
Maintenance.
to build it.
Right.
Right.
You kept it
You have
to
to
their
have
standards too.
Right.
police to be nearby or
And in the intervening
fire.
years, like our police department or our fire department have bought, trail vehicles because we actually have a lot of trails in the town, and so it would be easier to
Yeah.
get there than it would have been when this first was looked at, so. So I just wanted to
I
sort of
think,
bring it up.
I
that
think it's a
that
great
out there.
idea if you live near it, but not on it.
Well, it's just very depressing too, and it was, just like Scott just said.
Right.
When
Yeah.
it was a horizontal park, you didn't go anywhere, you didn't get anywhere.
Right.
Bolton at that time had refused to do anything, they didn't wanna do anything with their section. Hudson section was actually
Right, doesn't connect. to
covered
it.
with buildings.
Right, yep.
At the time, so, there were a lot of obstacles that people weren't really, unfortunately, seeing.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah.
If you're gonna do it, invite Concom, because Robin
Mhm.
Barry
Mhm.
is very much interested in it, so she'd be
Mhm.
your go-to person on Concom for this.
Well, she would be welcome to come to the
Yeah.
meeting.
Invite her, I mean,
Well,
if you wanna talk to
I
her,
think
then,
it'd be-
then
might
have
be
them
more-
do the grunt work,
Yeah.
for this, if that's what they want.
Well,
No,
and
well, also, I think it might be a nice idea to, if anybody that was on the previous committee.
right.
No,
No, but
I mean,
think
just
we should
to
at
come
least,
and,
like,
because people forget
the
what the
bylaw that
results
formed the original
were.
committee,
Yep.
how it got dissolved,
You
what
know,
we
I
need to
think that would be
reform it.
helpful.
I actually did a little, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I did a little digging last time this came up, so it was dissolved in August of 2018.
Mhm.
So what you would just need is a charge and a composition, which we could do, have the select board
Mhm.
recreate the committee, should we want it, and that's something I could draft up if
Yeah.
that's the direction we wanna go in. You'd advertise for it, have folks
Mhm.
come on it, and, obviously you'd want representatives from different things like conservation, like you said, and
Public.
public as well. You can
Yep.
kind of say which positions you
Yep.
want from where, and certainly something we could look at.
And a good mission statement,
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yep.
because our mission statement was something that people didn't quite understand.
right.
Our mission statement.
Your
was-
charge. and
Ours
your-
was to see what it would cost the town to do this.
Right.
And a lot of people thought that we were to
Going
build
forth.
it,
Right.
to create it, so then when we said, that's
Mm.
not what, that's
Right.
where a lot of the confrontation started.
Yeah, you always wanna make sure, like, you have that one-page charge, and I'd have the composition in there and have the board sign it, and you put it right on the website so that it's
Yep.
clear what the purpose is.
Okay.
That was sort
That
of
a-
my, yeah.
that all you
Sorry,
got?
I should, the Housing Trust did meet, that we have had, the Central Regional Planning Commission has actually done their interviews for the staffing that will help staff that committee. We've watched an hour-long video who produced it, has escaped me, but what other housing trusts have done in other towns and what the advice they have for folks. And started sort of putting some of those pieces together. We're still crawling at best. It's a new committee, we're just getting to know each other. But
How many are there of you?
there are five of us total,
Okay.
and all with a slightly different, but directly related to housing experience. So the talent on the committee, I think, is outstanding. And so when we have some staffing to help us feed information like what other towns doing, what are some of the best practices, what did they do as their first projects, also the reminder that it's not just about sort of building housing for folks, it's also how to sort of preserve the housing we have. It's one of those things that, to stop a unit from being lost will take a lot less money than it takes to replace that unit once it's gone, when it comes to affordable stuff. And so, I think there's a lot of good to still have there.
It'll be interesting to see what comes back from the survey that we
Yes.
did for the town, because
Yes.
I read in the Community Advocate, Shrewsbury came back and their number one was housing, for
Yep.
people wanting to stay in the town,
Yep.
so it would
Mhm.
be interesting to see what Berlin comes back at.
Yep.
And how that ties into you.
Yeah,
We
actually, we
should
talked
be
about that
getting
pretty
that.
heavily during our meeting, too.
We
Yeah.
should be
Yes.
getting results soon too, right?
Yep, yep.
I believe so.
They're working on the final report.
Okay. All right. You
Oh, I'll go
next?
last, I have,
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, I just wanted to let you both know that I've talked to Kristen and asked her to outline what she feels her goals should be for this fiscal year. Because she has access to the goals that we have previously talked about. And I think we were thinking maybe 5 to 7 goals that you could accomplish in this year, this fiscal year, rather than many, many. And that would be other than things like budget or, you know, evaluations, things like that. So when she can get, now that I think we've just about finished fire negotiations, and cross your fingers. And you're doing pretty good on procurements. You ought to have a chance to.
Yeah, that's finally moving.
Yes.
That's
So
moving
if we're
already.
ready for next Monday, then that's fine.
Yep.
We'll talk on Thursday and see how you're doing.
Okay.
All right. And I think that once we get the, what's it called, the actuarial study you had asked to put, and we will,
Yep.
we'll put OPEB or whatever it is on the question that you had that was more along the lines of
Right, who qualifies.
who gets it,
Yep.
who doesn't.
And some of the things is, my questions are not just about for OPEB, who gets it, like, when the Insurance Advisory Committee came together, they had a bunch of recommendations of things, money we could save for OPEB. We could save that money regardless of what we do with OPEB. You know, if there are things we're doing in town and
Right.
spending money on things that don't bring a lot of sort of benefit, we should stop doing it now and not wait. And one of the bigger areas is sort of who qualifies for health insurance. The 2 areas I raised in an email for people who obviously didn't see the email. I said the who qualifies for health insurance, and they talked about people who are Medicare eligible, having them move to Medicare and having the town cover their Part B, which would also potentially lower some of the insurance costs for town. And because insurance gets more unaffordable both for the town and the employees on a regular basis. And so things we can do to lower that cost without constantly raising co-pays and deductibles and other things like that, I think is definitely, I want to explore it.
Okay, so I don't know, can we include that
That's
along with
part of
OPEB,
what-
or could that
Yeah.
be
Yeah, that's
a
part of
different
what
type
we're.
of
It's part of what we've been looking at through the policy, especially the piece about putting folks on Medicare. This is a gap, to fill that gap between
right?
when they retire and can get on Medicare, and for most people, that's a few years. So it's a lot less when you look at it that way.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Peg?
All right, so there's a big one that I'll leave to the end. Again, stealing from other towns. And Scott, you had talked about this when we were thinking about coming off of Zoom and how more people probably go to a Zoom meeting. Well, what the Shrewsbury Select Board is doing, and obviously it's not something that needs a discussion, but a wrinkle in the brain, is that they're holding office hours. So what they're doing, because a lot of people don't go to their meetings, and a lot of people don't go to the public comment section. So because they have more select people, they're having 2. Obviously, we'd only have to go with 1 for open meeting. But they're having office hours an hour before one of their meetings every month, where they encourage the residents to come and have a chat, because some people may not want to be on camera. I mean, think about it, before the clickers arrived. No one wanted to go no for fear of what their neighbor would think.
So how is their attendance in something like that, do they say?
It said that it's just starting, so, I mean, we can let it roll. So the first office hours are next week, actually, at 5:30. So I'd be happy to reach out to their board afterwards and just see and get a little info on it. But I thought, what a cool idea to help reach out to the public. You know, somebody swings in on their way home, has a 10-minute chat,